Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the debut episode of our wrestling podcast. So without further ado, the following podcast is scheduled for one fall, and today's topic, what got me into professional wrestling and the times that we met professional wrestlers.
All right, so welcome to the O.W.P. This is our wrestling podcast. This is Butters along with Jess.
Hi, Dave.
And Cuz.
Hey, what's up, bud?
Just giving you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling from our standpoint. There's no inside sources here, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Now on to our topic today, what got us into wrestling. Hey guys, this is episode 1 of the O.W.P. Thank you for joining us. As I said, this is Dave, and we're going to talk about what got us into wrestling. We're also going to share with you just a few wrestling encounters along with those particular encounters that got us hooked. I'll be honest with you guys. I think I am the most boring about what got me into wrestling because it was so easy for me. So I'll start if that's okay with you guys. What do you think?
Do what you got to do, bud.
Do it. So I'll tell you guys, just to give some of these listeners an idea of what happened when we were kids, when we were younger. You didn't have Monday Night Raw. You didn't have SmackDown. What you had was Saturday morning wrestling and Sunday Super. There was like Saturday Superstars and then Sunday. I can't remember what the name.
Wrestling Challenge.
Wrestling Challenge. Thank you. And one day I was just flipping through the channels because, as I was telling you guys before, we had a lot of things when we were kids. We were pretty privileged, I must admit. But cable television just wasn't one of them. So we had all of like 7 channels to choose from. As you're flipping through those 7 channels, all of a sudden on Saturday morning after cartoons are over, I'm starting to see Saturday morning Superstars. And I let it lay there for a second. I got instantly hooked by this content of literally these massive, because, you know, in the days of WWE, this is, by the way, WWF at the time, these are the land of the giants, as everybody calls it. So there couldn't have been a wrestler there that was a superstar that wasn't more than 280, you know, if they were high level. So you're watching these 280, 300-pound guys destroy what we called prelims. Now we discover they call them enhancement talent. They basically pick up talent locally from the area and just let the superstars pummel them for about 5 to 10 minutes.
Most of them had actual farmer stands.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, right?
Country ball.
I'm pretty sure I could have been one of those local talents at one point. They're like, hey, bro, you want to get in the ring? Let's go. Here's $100, right? Back in those days. And they would literally tear those guys' heads off. And it was great because back in those days, you saw every clean move that superstar could do, and you caught every finisher. Everything was clean. There was no, oh my gosh, this guy might win. You knew who was going to win as soon as they set foot into that ring. And everything was pre-taped. We didn't know it back then. And everything was predetermined, pre-recorded. So it looked really clean. But there was something about these big, huge guys just destroying people and watching that product on TV, and I was instantly hooked. So, and just to give you guys an idea, this is the days of Hogan, the days of Savage, but we never saw Savage and Hogan actually wrestle on Saturday mornings. Those were saved for the pay-per-views. Those were saved for WrestleManias. You would see them cut a promo maybe, but you would never see them wrestle. So for the B team players, C team players that were destroying people on TV, watching Macho Man and Hogan and even Warrior later on cut this fantastic promo, and maybe you'd see him on a Piper's Pit or the Brother Love episodes later on. I was instantly hooked. I think I told Jess this later on. I never even saw a pay-per-view until I went to Jess's house like a year or two later. It was crazy. It was like years later down the road before I saw superstars actually wrestling superstars. Or you would go to a friend's house and try to watch Saturday night's main event, which I would always fall asleep and miss Hogan at the end of the night because I was a big wuss. Couldn't stay up that late. But for me, that's what got me hooked, man. It was an amazing time watching this happen. It's completely different from what you'd see today. For now, I think I'd like to turn it over to Jess. Hey, Jess, what got you into wrestling?
Probably what everybody thinks. It was completely Hulk Hogan. I don't even remember why I turned on wrestling for the first time. I was 10 years old. I started watching in like either the very, very late 87 or early 88. I want to say it was pretty much probably on the border. It was probably in December of 87, something like that. And I turned on back then. I think it was Channel 11, and it had Wrestling Challenge on, which was their syndicated show on Saturdays, and that was their main vehicle. That was how they made all their feuds and told all the storylines. They would film it in one day and tell like 4 weeks worth of stories. So they would tape like 4 weeks worth of TVs, and then back then there was only like 2 or 3 pay-per-views a year, so they had plenty of time in between to really just make these, or they planned out storylines to the next Saturday night's main event. And I turned it on, and it was Sam Houston and Terry Gibb was the match I turned it on to, and I'll never forget that match because right after Sam Houston pinned him with the devastating bulldog, they went to a video package of these two guys fighting for the WWF Championship from the last Saturday night's main event. So they go to this video package, and it's this big tan guy in yellow trunks and, you know, blonde, balding hair. But for some odd reason, the balding worked. I don't know why. And he was taking on King Kong Bundy, and I watched this clip of Andre the Giant interfering and all the stuff, and I just got hooked, and I got hooked on Hogan. For some odd reason, I was like, this is the guy I want to watch. This is the guy that just caught my attention.
Andre just saying to Bundy, give him the big one, give him the big one.
Is he going to set him up? What's he going to do?
Bundy with Hogan to the buckle. Here comes Bundy. A second avalanche.
Nobody's going to get up from a second avalanche. Cover him, Bundy, cover him. Bundy's demanding a 5 count, but he's not covering. Wait a minute, McMahon. His foot's touching Hogan's. That should be a legal count right there. His foot was touching Hogan.
New champion coming in by the feet. No.
It should have been the championship anyway. Bundy's foot was touching Hogan's on that 5 count, McMahon. Deny that.
I can't deny that, but I can't deny this. Hulkster somehow back on his feet, reversing it. Here's Bundy to the buckle. Bundy to the back. Hulkster drops to that. Covered up.
And ever since then, I have been a huge Hogan fan. And he's the reason why I started watching wrestling. You hear a lot of guys, you know, when they talk now in their autobiographies or their documentaries, you know, yeah, I started watching because of Hogan. I mean, you know, a lot of time has gone by. So a lot of people can say, oh, I started watching wrestling because of Brad or Sean. But I started watching wrestling in 87, 88, and it was Hogan for me. And I because of him, I really fell in love with the business of it. Once I got older, I started understanding, you know, just how fake it was. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean I started understanding, oh, wow, it's a soap opera, and there's a lot of production that goes into it. There's a lot of, and there's serious fans. Like, wrestling fans are really serious and really dead serious about their product. It's so funny how we'll totally watch this ridiculous soap opera, you know, Undertaker and Kane summoning lightning from the ceiling of the fucking arena, and it's obviously ridiculous. Like, just saying it out loud, I'm like, huh? But when it was happening, you know, people were just like, oh my God, like, they're just into the story. If wrestling is done right, and the characters can reach outside of the television and capture your interest, it's all good, you know. And there's different ways to do that, and Hogan did that for me, and just the way it was. And then I started really enjoying other guys like Savage and Roberts. And I mean, heck, I'm not a Warrior fan, but when Warrior first came on the scene, he was electric. I mean, he was a guy that everybody remembers. Tons of guys, like, I mean, people make fun of him now, but Beefcake was a big deal. Like, when I first started watching wrestling, like,
Beefcake was so over.
He was super over.
So
Honky
over.
was like one of the biggest heels you'd ever seen, like Honky Tonk Man. And from there, I started, our friend Joe got me involved in WCW in like 91. So I was watching wrestling for a couple of years in the WWF before I met Joe, and Joe was just like, oh, do you watch, I have cable and I get TBS, and I have, you know, this show I watch NWA wrestling, you know, do you know who Flair is? And I had gotten the magazines, so I had seen pictures of Flair and the Road Warriors and Dusty obviously went through WWF as Polka Dotted Dusty, but I always kind of saw those guys. And then I started watching WCW after that, and the rest is, well, history. I just stuck with it.
That's amazing when you think about it. When you're talking about the Hogans of the world, and everyone said, oh yeah, I got in with Brad, I got in with Shawn Michaels, and a lot of those guys were there at that time, but they had to work their way up, and Hogan really was the the A show at that moment. And it's funny, if you were in it 10 years before that, it was Bruno and other guys, you know, the San Martinos of the world, but Hogan is really where everything changed, the whole world, you know, of wrestling.
Well, and we got lucky because honestly, the Rock and Wrestling era from 83 on, was Vince's dream in the sense that he took it national. He didn't want the WWF to be this regional territory. Vince wanted to own the world. That was his plan when he bought the company from his dad. And I know I'm not trying to, suckle on his teat or anything like that, but everybody says that. I know that all the WWE documentaries now is kind of revisionist history because they beat WCW and they bought everybody out. So WWE can tell the story however they want. But without getting too detailed, and getting too scandalous with some of the stories, like Vince did put everything on the line legitly, and he had this vision, and he was a shark about it. He was ruthless in doing it, but he wanted to take over the world. He wanted the whole market, and territories fell, and people were, bashing him for you're killing wrestling, and maybe it did. Getting rid of some of the territories, you get rid of these places where rookies can develop and find their voice and find their character before they get exposed on national television. But it is what it is. I mean, Vince did what his vision, what his dream was. And I think the reason why we remember wrestling so much and why it caught our attention was because I don't know. I mean, I know there was LA wrestling, but that would have been the only place that we could have caught it growing up out here.
Yeah.
You always hear about the Carolinas or Texas or Florida and, all that stuff, New York and New Jersey for Vince Sr. But out here in LA, I know that people, wrestled at the Olympic Auditorium and stuff like that out in LA, but I knew that promotions came through here, but there was really no massive, someone's probably going to listen to this and be like, bullshit, of course there was. It was the WCCA and, whatever. But I mean, there really wasn't a huge independent wrestling.
I got one word for those guys, and it's go fuck yourself.
Yeah, I mean, LA wasn't a massive hotbed. Wrestling, I think, passed through LA, and I know that they, up in the Cow Palace in Frisco. That's where it was, right? Frisco?
Yeah, that's all great, and it did go through Frisco, but you know what? I could sit in my house and watch this shit on fucking.
Well, yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
Is like we were able to get hooked on it easier rather than just my grandfather, his drinking buddy couldn't go 1 week, so he took me down to the WrestleTorium and I saw Stu and that's great if that's how you became.
A 6-hour drive to San Francisco.
Oh, and it was amazing, and all these guys were screaming and hollering with their cigars. And
I can watch the Muppet Babies.
Bruiser Brody came out like
fucking afternoon, bro. That's how it works. Goddamn.
I mean, and let's be honest, like we also came up in the era of steroids, so that
fantastic.
was
you know what?
Super bloated and fantastic.
Hey,
sounds like Hogan.
Everybody,
really
loved the steroid era of baseball. You want to try to fucking
I know we're going off on a tangent, but at the same time, I think it still haunts the industry to this day. I mean, as good as the athletes are nowadays, without talking about creative or where they wrestle for nowadays, the athletes are phenomenal. Like the wrestlers now are just amazing, and they're clean. I would say the majority of them are extremely clean. But hey man, look, before steroids were illegal, they were legal, and the guys were just doing them. And obviously, we look back on it now, and you see most of them need their hip replaced 800 times just from the wrestling alone. But when you also roid your body up that much, you're going to do irreversible damage to your bones and your ligaments and everything. But I mean, heck, Hogan was a superhero, right? It's Macho Man, even though he was a normal size guy as far as height was concerned. Macho Man's fingers were like friggin' like bowling pins.
As stupid as it sounds, I mean, people in the 40s and 50s didn't think that smoking was actually hurting them.
Doctors said it was healthy.
Doctors told women who were pregnant to smoke.
Yeah, you're getting,
which I still think is a solid advice.
Very great advice.
But you're getting steroids prescribed from a doctor, and they knew it was enhancing their bodies, but they didn't think it was. No one knew what it was going to do to them on. So.
Well, and then you got the way they play both sides. The critics of wrestling like to play both sides.
Sure.
When they want wrestling to be considered a real sport, they'll bash people for drugging and steroiding and all that stuff. But then when they don't want it to be a real sport and fake, they'll make it fake and
shit on it.
Yeah, and shit on it. That's the critics of wrestling, Don't take steroid, but Sylvester Stallone, when he wants to beef up for Rocky 20, he could take steroids and no one gives two shits.
Look how incredible a shape he's in.
But if Hogan roids, then he's a cheater. Cheater at what though? I thought you said wrestling is fake. Well, the people are dying. Yeah, right. They're dying because they're also drinking 12 beers in a 3-hour span every single night.
The Nancy Graces in the world.
Yeah, and then they're popping pills to put themselves to sleep. Yeah.
Fat bitch.
Whoa.
Nancy Grace.
That's fine.
You don't have to call her fat. That might be true.
No, Dave, it's a fact on Wikipedia that she's a fat bitch.
Fact.
All right, we're sliding down the landslide now. So
that's fine.
But yeah, I'm with you on that. It is a totally different time, but it is what got us hooked. I think we have someone on the a little bit later in the gens that got hooked a little bit differently. Cuz tell us what got you into
Later,
wrestling.
but I mean, it was
Not that much later, but later.
89 or so.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. All I know is I traveled to Jess's house over here, and I love telling this story because I get to talk about and reminisce about the person that got me into pro wrestling, and it was Hogan's Superior. And I just remember walking into Jess's house one day.
Steve Austin wasn't wrestling, I don't think, at that time. Maybe he was in Texas.
You know, it was actually the second. So Austin's first, and then this
Steve
guy's
Austin
second.
is also
Hogan's
not
third.
his superior.
Austin would actually be this guy's superior, and then this guy's superior. You know, superior.
If
to
you have
Hogan.
to explain the list, it's not a good list.
It's a great list because Hogan's in third, baby. But so I come into Jess's house, walk around
And
the
for
corner.
those of you people who he's not, his nickname is Cuz, but he's actually legitimately my cousin.
Yeah.
So that we did grow up together.
was dubbed by your younger brother Shane Burch, Shane Fat Boy Burch, whose favorite wrestler is Triple H. That's all you need to know about that. But yeah, so I turned the corner into the living room of Jess's house, and there he is in his Shawn Michaels Playgirl pose, laying on his side with his face resting in his hand.
I used to lay on my floor, yes.
Yes. And there he is. I see him in all his glory, running down to the ring with tassels flaring from his arms and makeup on his face, shaking the ropes. The Ultimate Warrior is who got me into professional wrestling. There you go. There's a little warrior snort.
Little snort for you.
Snorting his coke. That's what he's definitely snorting with all that energy he's running out with and all his promos about spaceships and everything. That was great.
Got him with the... Oh, he nailed him! Here it is! He moved out of the way! Look out, the big splash! 1, 2! He got him! He got him! Unbelievable! The Warriors won the title! We have a new...
Little sidebar. Our beloved Mean Gene Okerlund passed away just recently, and the one person he said he couldn't work with, the fucking Warrior.
Most everybody says they could.
Guess what? Now he's stuck with him.
I know, right?
In the afterlife.
They're giving shitty promos in heaven, brother.
They're sharing rooms.
He's still interviewing Macho Man, though. No more questions, yeah, huh?
The cream of the crop.
Still one of the greatest promos. And that and the cup of coffee in the big time, huh? Great.
Shit. It's
So
fantastic.
he would be the second guy, though, because, Macho Man and Warrior, those were my guys, man.
Yeah. Hey, because if it's okay with you, I'm gonna send the ball your way. We said we're gonna talk about wrestling encounters. I'll tell you, I think I have the least of them because, as I talked about earlier, these assholes went to New Orleans without me a few years back for WrestleMania, and I'm still pissed about it because my punk ass couldn't afford it. But they had some amazing encounters, and Cuz, I'd like to start with you. We said we'd get into that. I know you had some fantastic encounters with Del Rio, and then also some encounters in New Orleans. I think you might want to save that Del Rio for last fantastic story, but even some stuff with Sin Cara as well. So what do you got there? Tell us about your encounters in what I can't remember what WrestleMania it was.
WrestleMania 34, baby.
34 in New Orleans. Tell us all about it.
Great time over there, man. I mean, Jess, you and Joe and Krager's there. You guys got the experience, the same stuff we did. Obviously, we experienced different wrestling encounters. The first one that was actually cool was Eric Bischoff. This was literally right after you saw him, I believe, Jess. But we were standing at the cross. We're gonna cross the street, and we were at the light. We're waiting for it to allow us to pass through, and we start walking, and from across the street, I see a very distinct figure. I'm like, man, that guy's hairstyle and hair color, like he reminds me of somebody. And he's on all, like, he's wearing a black suit jacket and everything. And he gets closer, and I look at him. I'm like, Bischoff? And he looks up. He's like, hey, what's up, guys? And then then he walks away. And then my wife and a couple of my friends that were with me, they were like, what? And I'm like, that was fucking Eric Bischoff that just walked right past us right now. And they turn, and there he is, Eric Bischoff. He just casually, hey, what's up, guys? So Eric Bischoff was pretty cool. And then we went to the fan access the next day, and we had a couple of great encounters there. Jason Jordan, we met Jason Jordan. We met the Ascension, Sanity. We got to encounter Trish Stratus. We're going to go to the bathroom, and a security guard stopped us. She's like, hold up. And through the curtains to the right of us, Trish Stratus right in front of us, just walks right in front of us, just like that. And then right after she passes us through, or passes through by us, you see Apollo Crews, Titus O'Neil, and Zack Ryder walk right past us like nothing. We took pictures of them. They smiled and everything for us. But then we got to stand in line for the Lucha Dragons, Sin Cara and Kalisto. And they're tiny compared to what you see on TV. I mean, I know Kalisto already looks small, but man, that guy is freaking short. Like, he was shorter than Crystal. He's a tiny motherfucker. And then Sin Cara's about my height. But we were posing for the picture with them, and Sin Cara, he's trolling me. So he's all, so where are you guys from? And I'm like, oh, California. And he's like, where's that? And I'm just standing there, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. And I look at him, because I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, dude, you fucking travel the world. You know exactly where that's at. And I look at him, and he's like, oh, I'm just kidding. He's like Triumph, the comic dog. But yeah,
for me to poop on.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's trolling us like that.
Poop on it.
I have to go. I'm on the pre-show. I'm late.
Yeah, he was about to fight me.
I'm sorry. That was
for that.
Lucha. That was rude. It's just good to be there. It's just good to be on the card.
Yeah,
he was going to fight me just for no reason, just like he's fought in Chris Jericho and Simon Gotch backstage.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, those are the encounters in New Orleans. I mean, we've had several encounters before that. I met Sam Roberts actually at a Monday Night Raw before he was actually employed by WWE. It was actually the first show that Crystal and I went to together.
He's writing for them now, right? Or no?
I don't think he's writing for them. He's just doing like their pre-show segments and everything. And he'll do like
he's had a podcast forever.
Yeah, the Sam Roberts podcast. But it was funny. That's how I knew him. I knew him from his podcast, and I used to listen to him. And I would follow like his Instagram and stuff. But this was before he was actually employed with WWE. So no one knew who he was, and we were walking around the lobby area of the arena. We were at the Honda Center in Anaheim, and I noticed he's very distinct looking too himself, with his red curly hair and everything, almost like Krusty the Clown or something. But I see him walking, and I'm like I know that guy. I'm like, Sam Roberts, and he looks at me. He's like, hey, what's up? I'm like, hey, can I take a picture with you? So I actually have a picture of that. But that was a cool little encounter. But the best encounter that I had was Del Rio. So we went to a Monday Night Raw, me, my brother, and a couple of our friends in San Diego. And this was the night after John Cena. This was when John Cena was on his Open Challenge run for the United States Championship. And it was at Hell in a Cell the night before. I think they were in Sacramento, if I'm not mistaken, for that. Or maybe even in L.A. They may have been in L.A. for that. But it was the opening match of the night, of the main card. And that's when Zeb Coulter came out, and he said, here's your opponent. And, and it was Alberto Del Rio. And Del Rio came out and shocked everybody, beating Cena in like 7 minutes with a super kick. And so the next day, we went to the Monday Night Raw in San Diego at the Valley View Casino arena. And we were standing in the parking lot because we saw wrestlers coming in and getting out of their cars. We saw Dean Ambrose and Cesaro. They waved at us. Dean Ambrose was cool. He looked like he was in a rush, grabbing all of his luggage. And he was walking to to go to the arena, and some like SA guy was like, hey, Dean, my daughter's your biggest fan, eh? And Dean Ambrose was like, all right, come on. And he like called them over, and he signed their autographs, and he started signing everyone's autographs. And we were just standing there, and all of a sudden they opened the gates, and Del Rio comes out. And everyone like crowds around him. He has the United States Championship around his waist. He's shaking hands, signing autographs. And a kid fully decked out in John Cena gear walks up to him. And Del Rio looks down at him and he says, get that shit out of here. And dude, everyone just starts laughing. It's fucking great, dude. It was fucking great. I actually had that on
scarred for life, bro.
Good. Well,
he's probably still crying like 2 years later.
That is what he gets.
Yeah, well, so much for little kids having a great wrestling experience, cuz so that's just fucking fantastic.
Well,
so
don't bring the kids to wrestling. They were the ones that ruined it in the first place.
Oh my god, maybe they ruined it because Del Rio told them to fuck off and get the fuck out because you're wearing Cena material.
He said the word shit, David.
Get that shit out of here.
Get that shit out of here.
Get that shit out of here.
Fuck all be all.
That's right. We told Paige after.
Rewinding back a little bit, to going back to New Orleans. We had a fantastic experience that Jess told us about in an elevator with someone who you just didn't quite recognize. Jess, can you tell us about that? Great story.
Yes, we stayed a little bit away from the venue, but just to give a brief description of what that weekend was, WrestleMania is at a stage now where it literally takes over the city for 3 full days. Like it dominates it Friday, it dominates it Saturday, it dominates it for like 5 days, to be honest.
It's not WrestleMania, it's WrestleMania weekend.
Yeah, it's WrestleMania weekend, literally like into
Wednesday
the week.
Or Thursday.
So, yeah, that people fly in as early, like Cuz said, Wednesday, and the WWE. Well, can we make a rule real quick before I tell my story? When I refer to it, I'm going to call it what it was at the time. What drives me nuts, but see, what drives me nuts though is what was I listening to the other day? Where on Conrad's podcast with either Shivani. Shivani still calls it WWE, even when he was talking about his stint there. Yeah, in '89, Shivani's like, and then they called me from WWE, and I'm like, it was WWF back then, and you're not on a WWE produced podcast, so call it what it was. So that's my rules. I'm going to call it WWF when it was WWF, and I'm going to call it WWE when it was WWE.
I second that.
That's it.
Well, before,
and that's why I'm not telling the elevator story because I'm mad about that. So basically what they do is they come in, they fly in as early as Wednesday or Thursday, and then it's 5 days of just WWE is so big and WrestleMania weekend is so big, it literally shuts the city down. I mean, being on Bourbon Street, first of all, was an experience in itself. You should just go anyway, because Bourbon Street is something to behold. But when it's full of nothing but wrestling fans, it was pretty awesome. Wow. We were walking down the street and all the clubs are, the front doors are open and it's facing the street. And literally, you're shoulder to shoulder with people.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's like Main Street on Disneyland, all the way down.
That's so cool.
So, but every club was banging wrestling music.
Wrestling
it was
theme
fucking
songs,
awesome.
people in the street singing to it.
Yeah, they had the live.
Oh my god.
The street performers in New Orleans and stuff. They were all playing Shinsuke's music,
John
Cena, and they were singing it acoustically or and all that stuff. It was awesome.
Fucking fun.
It was awesome. It just to see a whole city taken over. I've never felt more at home because even when wrestling's mainstream, if you're in a room full of people who don't like wrestling, you feel kind of icky. You feel weird. But I was in a city that was literally all wrestling fans. And even the clubs knew, the bars knew to put up wrestling posters, to name drinks. You would go in and some drinks and specials were named after wrestlers for that weekend. It was awesome. So
that's really amazing how a city embraced it like that. I'm not sure if another city would ever embrace it to that extent. That's pretty cool. I didn't realize that.
I think every city does, but
WrestleMania.
In Vegas, it's hard because the hotel that they're staying in or having the event in will probably deck out a little bit and put some posters up in the elevators, whatever. But the whole culture changed to wrestling. It was really awesome. It was really a wrestler's dream, to be honest, just to be in that environment.
For sure.
Even if there was no WrestleMania that weekend, the fact that it was that environment was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's the way it was. So basically, on Saturday, NXT was that night. And all throughout the weekend, too, there was every indie promotion, Ring of Honor. I believe, I don't know if PWG was up there or not. But a lot, Ring of Honor was up there. They had New Japan stars there that weekend too. And so they had there was every independent you can think of was running a show then. And so you could go see all that if you want to, but there was one event called WrestleCon and it's just like Comic Con and it was on Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon. And then NXT was that night and other independent shows for that night. So we got tickets last minute to WrestleCon. So on Friday night, I drank a lot. And so we all did, Joe, Craig and I, and we didn't go to bed until 2 a.m. So basically we got up at 9 a.m, but we were all still pretty rough when we got up in the morning. But we didn't want to sleep the whole day away, not just because we were in New Orleans, because it's goddamn WrestleMania weekend. So we wanted to really enjoy our Saturday. So I had just the worst hangover, pretty much. And I was fighting it all morning. I tried as hard as I could to take Advil. It didn't work. I tried to drink Pedialyte. It didn't work. I was just done. I had way too much Jack the night before.
You actually went to the store and got Pedialyte?
Joe brought Pedialyte because, I was hungover on Saturday. And I remember we were riding an Uber over. And I literally was just you can just let us out here. It's fine. Because there was so much traffic down the major streets because everyone's in town for Mania. So I was sweating so bad. I was sweating through my clothes. And I almost threw up in the car, all over everybody. So I was let's just park right here and get us out. Just let us out. Come on, let's go. So I made her let us out. And I told Joe and Craig, I'm dying. And if I didn't get out of that cab, I was either going to pass out or I was going to vomit or both. And they're oh my God. So we get in there and the wind outside felt good because it was rainy and cold outside. Yeah. It's New Orleans. And so I was all right. So we get in the hotel and I'm feeling a little bit better. And I'm hey, let's do WrestleCon. So we do WrestleCon, we go upstairs, we buy tickets, and already there's wrestlers. You walk in, it's like there's tables and booths everywhere, and so many wrestlers, like just all around. So at one point I said, okay, all these guys take cash for autographs and pictures and stuff like that. So I need to go downstairs. I don't have any cash on me. So I'm going to go downstairs and vomit in the toilet, which I did. And then I went and waited for seriously like 20 minutes because there was one ATM machine in this goddamn fucking hotel. It was the only ATM machine downstairs. Literally, there was a line wrapping around like the front lobby. And so I waited like 20 minutes in line so I could pay a $58 fee just to pull out money. And so I did that, and then I go and I feel a little bit better, but I still have a little bit of a headache. But I'm starting to recover a little bit. And so the line to the one fucking elevator that they kept working because they didn't want all the elevators working because if everyone's trying to get in the elevators and go to the same floor, that will also cause a problem. So they didn't want that. So they literally just designated one elevator and had one guy that made you wait in a longer line than the ATM to go back upstairs to the third floor where WrestleCon was. And I don't even know. I'm not walking the fucking stairs. Let me tell you that right now. And I think they actually had the stairs closed down so people wouldn't flood the stairs and shit. So you went upstairs. So we get in this elevator, and I would say there's a weight capacity for elevators, and there's also like a head capacity. You can't go over a certain amount of heads. So there had to have been like 12 people in this fucking elevator. And so the doors close, and I'm standing behind like this short guy. And he has like tattoos all on the back of his neck and stuff. There was a particular tattoo that I was staring at in the back of his neck. Like, when you see something and you kind of have deja vu, but you're just like, that reminds me of something. So I'm staring at this design on the back of this guy's neck. So I'm sure I look really like I'm sweating and like hungover and I'm staring at a guy's neck. So I'm surprised, like, if there wasn't like 12 people just packed in the elevator, suffering equally, I'm sure somebody would be like, why are you staring at the guy like that? So I'm just staring at the back of his neck and I lick his tattoo. No, I'm kidding. I'm staring at it. I was like, I don't know what that reminds me of. And as I'm just working this out in my head, we finally got to the floor, the third floor. The elevator door opens. And as it opens, this guy whips this mask out of his right pocket. I mean, just like in one motion, takes this mask out, whips it up, puts it on his head, turns around. It's Rey Mysterio Jr. And he gives us like the Wolfpack sign, like, the Wolfpack sign, and then sticks his tongue out, and then some agent or someone grabs him and whisks him right over to his autograph table. And I was like, the whole time I'm standing behind Rey Mysterio, like in the elevator. He's right in front of me, and I'm staring down at him. He's short, so I'm looking down to my left at him going, that's a tattoo. I don't know what that is. It's triggering something.
So straight up, honestly, what you're telling me is you were in a fucking elevator with Rey Mysterio and Jess Burch, the wrestling fan of all wrestling fans, doesn't even fucking know it.
Well, I didn't see his face. I just saw the back of his neck.
Are you making excuses right now? I'm just curious.
Well, no, and I couldn't. There's no way I could even get around to the front of that guy, that fucking elevator. It's like the smallest elevator ever. And I'm surprised Rey Mysterio didn't have his own. I'm surprised he didn't keep one elevator open for talent. Now that I think about it, very poor planning. So it was pretty cool that I was in there, and it was cool of him to turn around and stick his tongue out. He literally could have just kept his head down, and then someone could have just escorted him, and then you never would have known. But it was cool. Yeah. So
it makes for a great story. I mean, if he just walked away, you didn't know, you would have never known. But the fact that he turned around makes it for just an
and they had huge stars there. They had bigger booths that had like time from 2 to 5. This person's going to be here, and that was reserved for people like Sting. I think it went on for 3 days. I think they did it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We just went Saturday, but they had like Goldberg, they had Sting, and Austin had the longest line I've ever seen in my life. They had Austin. They had Trish. Trish and Lita, I think, shared a booth. I'm just trying to remember off the, and sadly enough, like, not to go off on a tangent on here, but I mean, in the middle of the little banquet hall that they reserved was like just, like the Hillbilly Gyms and Duggan. Duggan's a big deal. Everybody knows who Duggan is, but yeah. Duggan was like in the middle. But then you had like bigger guys on the end caps. Nice. You had like RVD. You had like those guys like that who were a little bit bigger. DDP had a fucking like boy band headset on.
Don't you dare disrespect DDP yoga under my roof.
And it was hilarious. He was like shrilling and like talking. It was like a walking info commercial behind his booth.
Selling yoga.
He was selling yoga, yeah. But he was super. First of all, DDP is really tall. He's a really big fucker. Like I was like, wow. And but he was like so super personable with everybody and like super nice. Jake Roberts, who is also deceptively tall. We always knew he was tall, but Jake Roberts was really tall, even in person. Scott Hall was really tall in person. I was standing right next to him because I came in an entrance and I feel like this big guy next to me to my right. And then I was like, God, like why are all these people people were like kind of cutting me off as I was walking in. It was right when I came up from Rey Mysterio punking me out like a bitch. So I walked in the banquet hall and I knew I was standing next to a big dude. But I was still kind of hungover and I'm looking at the whole thing. And the people are like cutting in front of me. And I'm like, why are you cutting in front of me? And I look and it's Scott Hall, like talking to people like right next to me. It was awesome. It was cool. Like it. So I got a chance to get Mean Gene's autograph, which was funny because Craig was texting one of his friends back home and Craig's like, yeah, everyone's here, you can imagine. But like, if you knew these people were here, and I think Craig texted him like Gene Okerlund and a few other people, who do you have to get? And one of his friends was a longtime wrestling fan too. Was like, you got to get Gene Okerlund. And so I went over and got Gene Okerlund, and he was super. What a gentleman! Like he was, and I'm not saying that because he passed, but he was super like funny and charming, and like he had like an assistant there with him, and he was just like. He took my money, like, it was like $5 or whatever for a picture and an autograph. I didn't care. I gave it. Whatever. Like Gene's worth it. And so I gave it to him or whatever. And he wadded it up in his hand and pretend like I didn't give it to him. And he was like, Charlotte, I don't remember what her name was. I can't remember. I'll just call her Charlotte. And he was like, Charlotte, make sure you get this young man's money like that. No ass? And he totally just took it from me and wadded it up in his hand. And so she was like, oh, and she's like $5, whatever. He's like, and don't let him tell you that he gave it to me and it's not in my hand. And he was just really funny. Like, he was just really funny. And like, so he laughed and I shook his hand and like, I told him 18 times my name was Jess, but he still signed it Jeff. But I don't care. It was a picture of him and Hogan the night that they wrestled together. That popular vignette where they trained and they took on, I think it was Fuji and was it Killer Khan or something like that?
Yeah, whatever. Meet me out front. It's 5 in the morning, man.
Oh, come on. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Where are we going to go at this hour?
That's exactly what we said. The workout start 5 o'clock. What are you doing with that smoke blowing in my face? My God, what is this, Gino?
Well, Hulk, I'm getting ready for breakfast here. I'm going to have some pancakes, a couple of eggs, some bacon. Before I work out, I was just having a cigar.
Hey, we're going to start out on the right foot. Get that coffee out of your mouth. We're going to start out on the right foot.
It might have been Morocco, but it was one of those two. And it was a picture after the match of him and Hogan in the wrestling tights with their shirt on. Yeah, it was awesome. And he put to Jeff, thanks or whatever. And, so I still look at that affectionately, even though you put Jeff. But it was just cool. It was cool to meet him. And I had met him years before in Vegas when he did Halloween Havoc, but I never got his address or his autograph or anything like that. Yeah. But it was cool to meet him. And I met Bischoff too and all that stuff. Bischoff was really funny and like really cool. And he took a picture with me, Craig and Joe, and he was super nice. Like he was a great guy.
Well, speaking of, make sure we're getting the names right. We're going to talk about a little bit of a lot of a rewind, actually. We're going to talk about a Day of Champions was the venue, if you want to call it that, in Anaheim back in, gosh, Jess, what would you say? Early 2000s?
It was 2006, I believe.
And what was really cool about this Day of Champions was it was pretty much anybody who was a champion you could think of that was in the local area was there. So you got the Ronnie Lotts of the world. You got the Jerry Rices of the world. You got the Bill Waltons of the world, right? You got everybody there that you could think of. And we all knew why we were coming. Some of us did say Stone Cold, but guess what? Stone Cold didn't fucking show up because so you can,
take that. Drink too much beer. When you're carrying the weight heavier than Hogan,
he fucked up the venue.
You'd have missed days.
He fucked up the venue. But you know who didn't fuck up the venue? Was Hulk Hogan. All right? Because Hulk Hogan, quite frankly, didn't fuck off any venue. If he had a date committed, he committed to it. That's one thing you can always say about Hogan. Plus a lot of other very good things you can say about Hogan, right? So we have this Day of Champions. We go with about, it was really 3 of us. We had someone drive us in case we wanted to have a few drinkies, whatever. And it was myself, Jess, and a friend of ours, Chris. And fantastic day. A lot of good leadership stuff. You got really good stuff. I believe Brooke, Hogan's daughter, actually sang the national anthem before everything started, which was kind of interesting. I believe she was 14 at the time. She's almost as tall as he was, though, at the time. She's, all the Hogans are quite tall.
And later she would grow up to date black people, as Hulk Hogan told us.
Hey.
Hulk Hogan told us that later.
Yeah, that's
she likes
that's his issue, not mine. But
Tell you
Anywho,
what I think about them, brother.
what happened after everybody got their segments in? They talked about what great leadership was, how to be a champion, which was really I really appreciate. I dig that kind of stuff. I think it's very motivating to your own personal life. I enjoy that stuff personally. Every person that was there had to commit to 45 minutes of autograph signing and pictures, right? And I believe Magic Johnson was there and a few others, and everybody committed to their 45 minutes and left, with the exception of one person. And that person happened to be Hulk Hogan, but not the way you think. That's what's key about this. When we started getting in line, we all talked about it. I said, Jess, I know you want to get in Hogan's line. So let's check it out and see how long it is. Make sure it's not a big deal. We start looking at the line. We know this line is at least 2 hours long. We're like, oh fuck, we're not going to see him. And then all of a sudden we see them kind of cornering people off and taking care of things. Like, well, maybe we will. You know what? Let's just get in line and see what happens. Because quite frankly, I didn't really care to get certain people's autographs. I wasn't really a 49er fan. I kind of wanted to get Magic's autograph, but I've kind of had that already. You know, it's a whole other story. But so we get in Hogan's line. And all the while, we don't even know Mr. T happens to tag along on Hogan's coattails. Mr. T had just gotten through cancer, a major battle with that. And he wasn't nearly the asshole that everybody had pegged him out to be before. It's kind of like that Luger story. Luger almost dies and all of a sudden becomes a saint. Not that that's a bad thing, but I think Luger really saw the end of it and realized that life is fleeting and you don't have to be an asshole. And he became a great guy, right? I think Mr. T was kind of going down that same road. He kind of beat cancer. Well, he didn't kind of, he did. And was super nice. All the while, we're sitting in line and we're like, we're probably not going to get a picture. Man, this really sucks. Jess even brought a book. It was actually one of Hogan's first, I don't want to say autobiographies, but brought that with him. And we're kind of bummed. We're like, we're not going to get a photo op. You know, but okay, it was cool. We got to see Hogan. He talked, and we were only like probably 30 feet from him. That's cool. That's never happened. So we're trying to look on the bright side of the whole thing. Anyway,
at this point, I'd seen him.
Take it over from here.
I'd seen him wrestle live before.
Sure.
I've seen like house shows and pay-per-views with Hogan on it. So I've seen him in person before, but I mean,
you've never actually met him.
I've never actually met him that close. So I just wanted that's the fact.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really good point, right? We've seen Hogan live, we've seen house shows at that point. Now, what's really cool about this coming into it, all of a sudden these staffers just start coming down the line and they start talking to everybody. They're like, "Hey, we just want to let you know that Hogan is absolutely committed to giving everybody an autograph today and a picture. All we ask is that you don't use your cameras. We're going to take the picture for you. We're going to give you a card and you're going to go upload it online. Is that cool?" And all of a sudden we were like, hell yeah, that's cool. Because we didn't even think we were going to get a photo. We were so excited. We're like, okay, this is awesome. All the while we're waiting in line and we still kind of freak out because in my opinion, if Hogan had left after an hour, hour and a half, I don't think too many people would have been pissed off. Maybe a few, but people like us would have understood, hey, maybe he's got to do something. Maybe his kids got something they have to do. I don't know. You know, it happens. He's a human being. But all the while, instead of him leaving on us, he would look around the corner and he would give a signal and get everybody all jacked up and fired up again. And then he'd look around the corner again and he would flex those 24-inch pythons. Just boom, give us one arm pose. Just bam. And you're like, dude, Hogan, yeah, it's so awesome. You just keep us pumped for 2 hours. Who can do that, right? And this is what Hogan was. And I still want to say kind of is. I know people have their issues with him now, but this is the kind of stuff we dealt with Hogan as young adults. Finally, we get to the front of the line and we get our photo. And I got to tell you, I was not as starstruck. I think I should have been, and I think now it might be worse. But I wasn't the biggest Hogan fan in the world. I always respected Hogan, and I love what he did and the story he could tell in the ring. But I was the first person to stick my hand out. He still had a Sharpie in his hand, and I said, "Hogan, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to meet you and be able to just do this with you for a few minutes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." And he shook my hand and said, "You know what, man? You're welcome." He actually shook my hand, so I actually shook Hogan's hand. I think I'm one of the few people that can actually say that in our group, that I shook Hogan's hand, because I just wasn't intimidated by Hogan in that way. But I think it's because I wasn't as big of a fan. I think now if I met Kurt Angle, I'd probably shit my pants, right? But Hogan, for me at that time, it wasn't that way. So I just took the opportunity and had it. And all the while, Hogan's looking to his left, which is Jess's right and my right. And all of a sudden he goes, wow, you guys brought the book and everything. So you guys don't know, Jess brought Hogan's, I think, like first book.
It was his WWF.
His WWF
autobiography,
autobiography, which was great. It's a good book. And just like, I want him to sign this. I want him to sign it. And I'm like, that's a great idea. You should bring it with you, right? So he had it with him the entire time. And Hogan's like, well, hey, brother, who do I make this out to? And then it just got really quiet. And I realized for the first time ever in my life, I realized that Jess couldn't get the words out. Jess is always able to verbalize anything and make a joke out of anything and have fun with anything. Jess, for just a moment, couldn't say anything. And I'm like, oh, this is not what I'm used to. And I'm like, am I going to have to tell him what Jess's name is? And I started to say, yeah, this is Jess. And he goes, Jess, my name's Jess. Finally, he was able to get it out. And Hogan's like, oh, okay, cool, brother. I think Hogan's kind of used to that, right? People just kind of being starstruck. But I was quite surprised. I never thought Jess would have that situation where he just couldn't say anything. And the coolest thing was at the end, Hogan not only signed it, but filled out the entire 8x11 page of that book. Hey, Jess, gave him a full writ and signed it, took his time with it. And then we took a picture with Mr. T and Hogan, and I still have that picture framed to this day. And I personally think it's one of my favorite experiences ever, because not only because it was Hogan, it was because that Day of Champions and that kind of stuff, but the fact that Hogan took his time and way overstayed his priority. He stayed more than twice the time he had to, which, by the way, if you listen to a lot of Hogan's stories, that's the norm. If Hogan needs to stay longer, he will. He understood the fan base, probably to his detriment of his personal life, but he did that, and you have to respect that. He was bigger than the industry at that moment, in more than one moment, but definitely at that moment too. And I think it's just a fantastic story, and I love to share it. I'm so humbled and honored in hindsight to be a part of that. Jess, I'm sorry, I kind of took the wheel on that. Did you have anything you want to add to that?
What, as far as Hogan's character when it comes to treating his fans, or how he treats his fans.
Yeah.
I can quote Bobby Heenan, who in Hulk Hogan's Hall of Fame clip said, the question was asked how Hogan, how he should be remembered. What is Hogan's legacy? And Bobby Heenan said, the way he should be remembered is as the greatest attraction this sport has ever seen. And that is who he is. No matter who came after him, because there was only one guy that could have come first. I know that sounds cliche and lame, but he was the superstar that made them superstars. Yeah. When Vince called them all superstars and all that stuff, took them out of territory and all that stuff, and there you are, my wrestlers are superstars. Yep. Like, he was legitimately a superstar. He was just as big in the '80s as Michael Jordan. In the late '80s, when Jordan started coming on real big, he was just as big as Michael Jackson as far as name recognition.
Yeah, I agree.
He was just as big as Stallone and Schwarzenegger and all that stuff. Hulk Hogan was legitimately, it's an overused phrase, he was a household name in the 80s and 90s. He absolutely was. Well, and for a wrestler to achieve that kind of fame, you could say what you want about the direction Vince took wrestling and the way Hogan took wrestling, and whether it was good or bad, that all these territories fell, and wrestling had to pick itself up from the ashes and start over and all that stuff. And and then when Turner bought WCW, it's the same thing on the other side. You got these two guys that just own everything, and it's not fair. And that's whatever. That's a whole separate thing. For someone to come from that kind of fame that I just described to go all the way to 2006, he's been put in the Hall of Fame already. He's had his nostalgia run. He came back in like 2002 and wrestled The Rock and did all that and stole the show and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to brag, but he did. And so I, after all that, for him to be at a charity event was kind of cool. And then on top of that, for him to put in the effort that he did, and he didn't have to. And again, I know there's a lot of Hogan haters out there, especially with the way he's been in the last 5-6 years, and the scandals and all that stuff. And I'm not defending or condoning any of that. What I'm saying is, the guy who got me into pro wrestling, he will always be the guy that got me in pro wrestling. Even if he, and I'm not making lightly of this, even if he commits a crime or murders someone, and I'm not trying to play on somebody else by saying that. I'm just trying to think of the worst things I could think of. That would definitely end his run with me as far as me being his fan. But at the same time, like, he always will be the guy that got me into pro wrestling. So to see him in person and to see, the way he treated people, and to see that he was only supposed to be there for 45 minutes, but he stayed for 2 hours total. Also, Larry Miller is a pretty well-known stand-up in like the 80s and 90s and stuff. And he was in a movie with Hulk Hogan. I believe he was in, he was like the villain boss in Suburban Commando. And they did an interview with Larry Miller years later. And they were like, of all the people that you've worked with, I think they brought up, you also did a movie with Hulk Hogan back in like the early 90s, right? And he was like, let me tell you something about Hulk Hogan. He was like, to sum him up in a phrase, Hulk Hogan, quality human being. He's like, we would shoot on the movie set for 12 hours every day, and everyone's tired. Hulk Hogan's the star of the movie. He's doing all his own stunts because he's a wrestler and all that stuff, and he's doing everything in this movie. And, he's just been, he's flown in on planes. He just got, done beating himself up, and he's got to film for 12 hours on this movie set. And then, everyone would just go back to their trailer and hibernate. But there was always kids and being brought on the set because, oh my God, Hulk Hogan's on a movie set. So, not just Make-A-Wish, but other people were just taking tours, and the kids, oh my God, that's Hulk Hogan. And even adults knew who Hulk Hogan was, and they wanted to get his autograph. He would sign autographs for an hour, 2 hours after filming for 12 hours in a day, and stay there until every single one was signed. Every hand was shook. And then he would do it with no complaint. He would do it with all this energy, and he would go back in his trailer, and he probably passed out. But then he would wake up the next morning, do the movie, see fans afterwards, do the whole thing. Again, it's a shame, that he has his opinions towards certain races of people, or I can't even say it's his opinion. I think he was using inappropriate. He was using inappropriate language that a lot of people in America have gotten comfortable with using, and it's not okay to use that language. And I think we're at a time now where I know everyone says, "Oh, Americans now in 2019 they get so butthurt." But you know what? I think we needed to pull it back a little bit, didn't we? I think the late 90s and early 2000s and the Jerry Springer era went a little nuts. If you think about the Attitude Era and what we're able to get away with on TV, and there was no like. When you would see something raunchy, it would be a build up to it, and then like it would that one raunchy scene in a movie, or that one raunchy joke by a comedian, or that whatever, it would pay off because it would be like the last joke, or it'd be the build up to that. We got so desensitized in the late 90s and early 2000s to certain things. And I think that, now we're going harshly the other way. So unfortunately, years ago when Hulk Hogan got recorded, he also got in an age where everyone's literally walking around with a camera and a recorder in your pocket.
Yeah.
You got to be careful when you're a celebrity. And I don't mean be careful as like hide that racism. I don't mean that. I mean like, you got to just be careful about what you're saying. It's not just, you're not judged anymore at public autograph signings like we're talking about right now. You're judged when you're drinking by yourself, or you think you're by yourself with your family on your boat,
or
you're
judged at the 1%.
Yeah, or you think you're talking to your son by yourself in prison, and someone's tapping the line. And again, it's wrong that he had those opinions. It was wrong that he talked like that to begin with. But again, like hey, we all in private have said things that we probably aren't proud of.
But it's his right. Caveat was just
it's his right, but it's also people's right to not like him because of it, and I support that.
It was also just him trying to comfort his son. I mean, that's
that's the spin that he put on it, and even
as
a wrestling fan,
that's what I believe.
Even as a Hogan fan, I can see that's what he did.
If my kid was in prison and he had that overwhelming sense of guilt, and I was afraid he might hurt himself, I would tell him whatever I had to tell him
you needed
to make sure he came out of prison okay.
And in all honesty, I think Hogan's.
There's so many people that have no idea how that's like.
Hogan's, pun intended. I think his life needed to come crashing down a little bit because he was, even after his his prime, Hogan Knows Best got famous. I mean, how many times did Hogan get famous? He was famous in the rock and wrestling era. He kind of went away for a bit. Then he re-revolutionized everything with the NWO. Sure. And then he was famous. Then he went away for a little bit. Then he comes back and nostalgia was running wild. Hall of Fame. Hogan Knows Best becomes a smash hit as a reality TV show. And I mean, the guy, 3 different times from 1983 to 2006, 7, 8, 9, was in the news and in, people's homes and, relevant in a sense, so it's kind of, he's had a hell of a run. So to get the experience that we got with him that year at that charity event was it's something I'll never forget. Even though I couldn't talk.
You can't deny what Hogan's done. And who cares? I mean, he said whatever he said. I give Hogan shit because I just like to make fun. It's just fun to troll about it. But I love Hogan. And you know what? He's not a racist. And that's coming from a partial colored person. Hogan is not a racist.
And he's been
It's
around.
just, he
and
said stupid shit. Who
He
cares?
says stupid stuff,
That's
and it's
all
not
it
okay,
was.
and it's not all right. He got comfortable in his own celebrity, and again, that whole 5 or 6 year window when it still to this day, people do stupid shit like celebrities, not realizing again that every person has a fucking recorder in their pocket, and you're gonna get recorded if you say stupid shit or do stupid shit, and to this day in 2019, celebrities are like, huh? How did you film that? I don't even know.
It's the
people
call out culture.
So and again, it's not okay. I'm not condoning it.
It's called Alexa, bro.
And I'm not trying to rant off, on this subject, but
Alexa.
it just links in. So it was a good story. I want to end it on a good note. It was a good story.
Hey,
it was
Alexa,
a good experience.
record everything that I do that's wrong in my life.
Okay, you're a racist and a bigot,
bitch.
Automatically.
But you do, to play devil's advocate, you do have a responsibility as a celebrity. That's your job. Your job is also to mind your P's and Q's in fucking public. Like, it's your job. It really is. I know. Can you imagine having your life filmed 24/7? I get that, and boohoo.
So a celebrity could never, wander off into the bathroom and kind of stroke one.
Well, that's what's dumb about it.
Well, I mean,
judged on what you do.
If he's going to be in a place where somebody can record him stroking one off, then don't do that.
Chances are, Jess, it's on his cell phone. It's already
being camera toilets.
Just saying.
Or the toilet cameras, is that what they call them?
Yes.
Toilet cameras?
The snowflake culture.
The fact that
calls out these people.
Can you believe people like that? They put a camera in a toilet.
Yeah, I don't.
That's ridiculous.
And you sit, and they're like, "That." I didn't even know that was there's his butthole. There's the main event.
Let's keep the tangent on Hogan right now.
I thought we were talking about toilet cameras.
Hulk Hogan, brother.
We're talking about wrestling.
Being racist, brother.
If we want a toilet cam podcast, I'm sure we'll get a lot of followers for that. But
I bet we get more followers than a wrestling podcast.
Yeah, we'll hold that off for next week. By the way, speaking of Hogan, Jess, I'm going to keep the ball in your court right now. And I want to kind of try to set the stage here. There was a time in the mid to late 90s, my dumbass was trying to go get a degree somewhere. I don't know what I was thinking. But a few of my friends started to realize that there was a nice little event in Vegas called Halloween Havoc that ran, I think, for 4 straight years right out of Vegas. And there's some phenomenal stories, and Hogan, I think, is the key to that. Jess, why don't you tell us a little bit about Halloween Havoc and those stories?
WCW's first year, they had Halloween Havoc 96, 97, 98, 99, and 2000. All at the MGM Grand Arena in Vegas. So every single year, we would go, like, whether it was, I think Craig and I went every single year together, but it would be a combination of different people. Some years we'd go with like 4 or 5 friends. Some years we would go with just him and I and one other person, 2 other people. So the very first year was probably the best in the sense of I did not even know what I was in for in that sense. We were excited that we were going to go watch a pay-per-view. And WCW, to give people an idea of what WCW was like in 96, the NWO was in its infancy stage. It had just erupted like 3 months before. So Hall and Nash did their surprise debuts on Nitro. Hogan revealed himself as a third man at Bash at the Beach in 96. War Games already happened with NWO. So NWO was only like 3 or 4 months old. Nitro had already taken over firmly in the ratings and put WWF as number 2. Yeah. And so Halloween Havoc was like it was kind of the second big pay-per-view. The first one was Fall Brawl 96, which was great. And the NWO storyline was just hot, and it's all every wrestling fan wanted to talk about. It brought wrestling back up in the United States. A lot of people give the Attitude Era credit for bringing wrestling back, and that was Vince's response to WCW's first shot, which was the NWO, a gimmick that Eric Bischoff copied from Japanese wrestling. Mm-hmm. But he thought to himself, God, I just signed Hall and Nash. I want to bring them in some kind of a cool way. I want to bring them in a non-conventional way. I don't want to give them a plumber gimmick or a carpenter gimmick or whatever. I'm not going to do or name them after a vehicle, or anything. I want to bring them in as like something real. I want this to be different. So he was at a Japanese show and he saw. I don't want to mess up the details because, again, someone's probably going to call me out on it. But I think it was like All Japan and something else, or New Japan and something else. They had some invasion angle where one company was invading the other. So Bischoff's like, why don't I do that with Hall and Nash and call them like the outsiders and kind of hint that they're coming in as to infiltrate from the WWF. They're trying to infiltrate WCW and make us look stupid. And he came up with the idea of, I'm going to shit on my own company. I'm going to shit on WCW. And I'm going to have these guys come in, and we're going to every week we're going to reveal, they're going to have another guy. Hall debuted. I got my big guy, my big buddy that's coming with me. You'll see him soon enough. And then Nash the next week debuts out of nowhere. And then now we have a third buddy. He's like a medium-sized guy. He's coming. And all that stuff. And so they did the third man gimmick. It was Hulk Hogan turning heel for I can't say the first time in his career, but to most modern wrestling fans at the time, they don't remember Hogan when he was heel.
I do.
So for him to turn, videotapes and stuff.
I do have a videotape of that too.
But I mean, for him to turn, it was really the first time he turned heel since he had been like the household name and everything. So people were shocked. You never thought heel Hogan, even though he had been getting booed for a long time in the yellow and red because it was old and tired. But nobody really associated it with it. So NWO was hot. And so the fact that it went to Vegas was another huge, bold move on Bischoff's part, because he's just like, dude, we're on fire. And you have to sign venues months before. So I believe even before the NWO was a thing, Bischoff already had MGM booked.
Yeah.
So WCW was going to go to the MGM, whether, they already had it booked. So it was just perfect timing. So wrestling was getting really hot again at this point, and especially hardcore wrestling fans were starting to come back around, and the mainstream media and just the casual wrestling fan, they were starting to come back around.
And it was to the older viewer back.
Yeah, it was to WCW first, not WWF, folks. Just so you know, I lived it, so I know what I'm talking about. So we get there, and we're just excited. We have a room at the MGM, and we're like, fuck yeah, dude, we're gonna watch Halloween Havoc. It's gonna be awesome. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be like, great to see a pay-per-view and live wrestling, and WCW's hot. And I'm excited I get to see Hogan live again and all that stuff. And there's other guys that we love there, like, Hall and Nash were going to be there, of course, and Flair was going to be there. So it was all cool. So we get there, and, we're like, maybe, just maybe, we might just run into a wrestler in an elevator or something or whatever. Like, that was our big hope, we'll catch someone. So we watch the pay-per-view. It was a great pay-per-view to watch live. Halloween Havoc 96 was really a fun show. It opened up with Rey Mysterio and Dean fucking Malenko, and they tore the house down. Wow. And it was great just to see, and it was a really good show. So we're done with the show, and we go upstairs, and we just kind of have a couple beers, because some of us were underage at the time. We weren't quite 21 yet. So we went upstairs, and we had beers and, on ice in a bathtub and the fucking sink. So we, booze up a little bit or whatever, and we're going to go downstairs. And I don't know, maybe we might run into a wrestler who's, trying his luck on the slots or the tables or something. So we go downstairs. The elevator opens. I see a big crowd of people, and in the middle of this people is Booker T. So I'm just like, cool, man, we get to see Booker T. He was super tall. He's a big dude, and he's everything you think you would meet when you meet a wrestler, a big guy, larger than life, big, awesome, good looking guy, muscular and all that stuff. So he was being really good spirit with the fans. He was signing their autographs. Him and his brother, Stevie Ray, lost the tag belts that night to Hall and Nash. So it was just cool. He was in good spirits, talking with all the fans and stuff right in front of the elevators. So I was like, dude, I didn't want to mess around and wait in that big crowd. So, and plus security was kind of ushering us out of the hall, because it's a small hall where the elevator is. Of course. So it was cool. I was like, dude, we got to see a wrestler close up and personal. That's awesome. So I was like, that's it. Our night's made. We're going to go, whatever. So we walk around the corner, and Eric Bischoff later in his podcast would call it the Betty Boop Bar. Yes. We didn't know what the name of it was. Yeah. But it was a bar that was up probably on like a 3-foot platform. I don't even know the size of it. I mean, it was a decent sized bar, and you had to walk up like 3 stairs to get on this 3-foot platform, and there was this bar. And on it was Arn Anderson, Flair, and like a bunch of other wrestlers, and there was 2 security guards guarding the front 2 entrances of this bar. So we knew, like, I think all of us except for Nick and one of Nick's friends were underage. Craig and I were underage. We were under 21. So we knew if we got carded, we would get kicked off the bar. But the bar was so crowded that there's no way we could get on anyway. So we're standing, like at the bottom of this 3-foot platform, looking at this, everyone on this bar. And Arn Anderson was there with a bucket of ice down Coors Light. And the funny thing is during the pay-per-view, he fought Luger. And Luger hit him with the chair and hurt his neck, and they quote unquote took Arn Anderson out on a stretcher. And apparently the stretcher stopped right at the bar in front of a bucket of beers, because Anderson was whooping it up and having a good time with Flair and drinking beer at the bar. So that was really cool. And we couldn't get on it. So then I realized that, oh my God, wrestlers have to walk from the elevator to this bar to get on the bar. So we met people briefly, just really quick highs from Chris Jericho, who was super nice. Eddie Guerrero, who was really nice to us. Chris Benoit came down, super quiet. But like shook our hands, said
That's
hi
not
to us and all that stuff. I don't know what happened to that guy.
Try to kill you?
Just went somewhere. But Guerrero talked to us for like 60 seconds, 90 seconds. Like, hey guys, glad you guys like the show. And he was selling his injury, which I loved. He was holding his ribs, which DDP worked on during the match that he had that night. So he was even kayfabing everybody when he was out. He's awesome. Jericho's really cool. Hey, did you guys like the show? Jericho's really nice. Gene Okerlund, we met briefly. He came down there. Hey guys, and whatever. He had a sweater tied around his neck and everything. He was all prim and proper, Gene Okerlund. And we met a ton of people. And one person was a dick, a Luger, came down there, and everybody else had no problem. So Luger comes down, and we're like, "Oh, Luger, can we have your picture real quick?" And he's like, "No, not right now." And then we're like, "Oh, he must have to go. Like he's going to save a cat from a tree or a baby in a burning building or something. He must have to go do something really important." And what he did that was important. He put his one foot on the first step of the bar, and he stood there and was waiting for somebody and waiting for somebody and waiting for somebody. And then finally somebody showed up, and then they both go in the bar. So in that time, he could have taken his picture with us or whatever, but he was a prick ass. So I'm here that he's a better person now and blah, 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 whatever. But Luger was a dick to us. Another person that did not treat us very well was somebody that has passed away, and I'm sure a lot of people will take exception, and that was Dusty Rhodes. Of all people, Dusty Rhodes gave us kind of a bad experience.
Come on, baby.
So we were taking a little bit of a break, and we wanted to go to the restroom, so we went around the other side of the bar. And there was really not that many people there. I would say maybe like 6-7 people walking down the side corridor where the bathroom was. So we come out of the bathroom, we're walking down this corridor, and walking towards us is Lee Marshall, who at the time was a WCW announcer. Heavy-set guy, glasses, mustache. He talked like Tony the Tiger, like, "Hey, kids, hi." And so he was walking with Dusty Rhodes towards us. So we stop him.
No respect, no honor. There is no honor among thieves in the first place. He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family. You don't know what hard.
We're like, "Oh, Dusty, can we have a picture real quick? All that stuff or whatever." And Nick had like those disposable Kodak cameras back in the day. See, there's no cell phones back then.
Sure.
We had a disposable camera that you had to get developed. It took like 3 days to get developed, and then a week later you had your pictures. So Nick was like, "Yeah, he had the camera ready and all that stuff." And Dusty looked at us and he goes, "Nah, not right now." And I'm like, "Really?" And then we look at Dusty did Dusty Rhodes in an unpopulated hallway just tell us no? Now, everybody's entitled to a bad day. I understand this, and I'm not ripping on him. Maybe he was maybe he had a big shit he had to take or something. I don't know. But it was just, when 4 fans, 5 fans stop you in a hallway, that's not crowded. It's not like we were in the middle of the casino and he's like, "If I stop now, I'm going to get mobbed," And let's be honest, in 1996, the world was clamoring for the NWO and other people, not necessarily commentator Dusty Rhodes. I'm just saying. I'm not saying people wouldn't recognize him. I'm just saying he wasn't stopping the mainstream crowd at all. So we were shocked that he said, "Nah, nah."
But he's the second most.
So I don't remember the exact words that was said. It was just more of like
next to Muhammad Ali.
"Oh, come on, are you sure, Dusty?" And Lee Marshall of all people was like, "Come on, Dust, just take a picture real quick." And wow, they're great. And so we said, "Okay, yeah, no problem." So finally Dusty goes, "Fine, real quick, I got it real quick." So we take the picture, and I don't know what I did with the picture, but the picture tells 1,000 words because we have a look on our face like we're all being forced to do it. Dusty has a look on his face like someone just shoved shit in his mouth and he didn't want to be there. And it sucked really bad because it's totally summed up the exact experience. Now, I choose to believe all the stories that all the people inside the business and outside of the business, quite frankly, have told about Dusty, about he was a really great guy. He was a nurturer. He nurtured a bunch of talent. He was a good man and all that stuff. I choose to believe that. And I don't choose to believe that because I want to, I know he's something else. I believe that he was a good guy. I believe for some odd weird reason, we caught him in a weird moment. He didn't want to take a picture. It sucks that it went down like that. But I'm being honest. That was my only altercation with Dusty Rhodes.
That's too bad.
So it sucks. It really wasn't fun. Luger, I kind of expected because even by that time we had heard that we were sort of a dick. Yeah. But to get that from Dusty, I was a little sad. Macho Man, total opposite. He was on the bar, and we saw him dip out. There was a back entrance to the bar that just the employees took, and that sneaky son of a bitch went down that ramp. So Nick, Craig, and I ran around to the other side of the ramp real quick, and we caught him. And he looked at us. He's like, "Oh, you caught me." And so we're like, "Okay, you got to take our picture and all that stuff." He's like, "All right, real quick." Because legitly, unlike Dusty, Macho would have gotten mobbed. So Macho was just around the back of the bar, meaning if somebody would have walked around the corner, somebody wouldn't want like, that's Macho Man Savage. And then 50 people ran over. So Macho's like, yeah, real quick. Nick goes to take our picture. Flash doesn't work. Macho Man goes, oh, that's it. I'm out of here. Just kidding. And like, so we're all fucking dick. Cool. Like, so yeah, and the picture was awesome.
The greatest, man.
His fingers were like, I mean,
I was just saying, was he huge?
I mean, I was taller than him, but he was a massive man. Like
really?
he was stacked. He was stiff. Like as far as like, body wise, he was like tight.
Yeah.
Like a tight.
Working out like everything.
And his fingers were like sausages. And like we shook his hand, we're like, Jesus Christ, like this guy's a big guy. So that was a really, really good experience. Another good experience was a guy, again, Hulk Hogan. We're standing, we're gawking at the bar, and then we hear this commotion coming from the entrance of the hotel. And there's probably like 30 people you could see, like security walking down, and this mob of people. In the middle, I just see this bandana bouncing up and down. And right away, everyone's like, that's Hulk Hogan. So he comes on the bar with this entourage of like 30 people, and he gets on the bar. And in the meantime, so many people have like clogged the general walkway up in front of the bar that security is yelling at us. You guys got to keep moving. Like you're clogging up. It's a fire hazard. You can't just stand here. You got to keep moving, blah, blah, blah. So we're like, whatever. But we see Hulk Hogan getting on the bar, so no one's moving. So Hulk Hogan catches the security guard, like kind of giving a shit. And Hogan leans down to him and he goes, what's the problem? And the security guard goes, well, sir, they cannot just stand in the hallway. It's a fire hazard. We have to keep them moving. So Hogan said, well, I'm sure if you let me stand up here and I strike a pose for these guys and everyone takes a picture, everybody will move on, right? Everyone's all, yes! So he gets on, he flexes a double bicep, everyone takes their pictures, and they move on. And that was another great moment and memory I have of Hulk because he didn't have to do that. And that was such an awesome thing for him to do. And he was a heel at that time too. And then but he was, it was after hours and all that stuff. And he did not have to do that. And he did it and everyone loved it. And that was another thing I can put in my I Love Hogan memory bank. But God, there's so many good stories in Vegas, like so many good stories. Another one in particular was with Flair. And this was in the year 2000. All the stuff I told you before was all in the year 96. We didn't really meet anybody really in 97, 98. We might have ran into a couple people, but it was very fleeting. I did have a nice half an hour conversation with Pedro Morales, which I really enjoyed, actually. I don't think I've ever told you that before. I bought him a couple Coronas, and I talked to Pedro Morales for 20 to 30 minutes, and it was fantastic. A super nice gentleman, and it was just cool to sit and talk to him. Nobody knew who he was. And I knew who he was. And I sat down and I was like, that's Pedro Morales. I'm like, hi, Pedro Morales. And he was shocked. He's like, you know who I am? I was like, yeah, fucking Pedro Morales. How would I not know who you are? And not knowing, I'm a wrestling crazy person. Like, so I studied and, tape traded and learned about who he was years before. But so, yeah, I bought him 2 Coronas and we talked and he was a perfect gentleman. And one of his favorite wrestlers at the time was Brett. He just talked about how good Brett was in the ring and about how he respected Brett. And I think I asked him, if you were Hogan, would you do everything the same? He's like, I would do more. I'd make more money, Yeah. He's like, I would do everything that he talked about. Hogan was a nice guy and all that stuff. And he was out to make money and all that stuff. So it was cool. So another one was in 2000. It was Flair. Now, by the year 2000, anybody who follows wrestling knows that WCW was in the toilet in the year 2000. And it was not good.
It was all but done.
The house was still pretty full. They still put a lot of people in 2000 in NGM. I would say that arena holds like 16,000. And they probably put like a good 13,000 in there still for falling apart like they were.
We are on tour, and we're doing it better than anybody else alive. Now, Buddy Landell, it's so hard for me to sit back here in this studio looking at a guy out here hollering my name. When last year I spent more money on spilt liquor in bars from one side of this world to the other than you made. You're talking to the Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying.
So the bar was not this bar that I just described in 1996 that was vibrant and had Dusty Rhodes going, nah, 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 and all that stuff, like, had just faded down to this bar that had probably like 20 people on the deck, 30 people maybe. Yeah. And the only wrestler that was up there in 2000 was Flair. And we didn't know this. So me, the girl I was seeing at the time, and Craig, we were sitting at this bar. Yeah. And about 5 people to our right, Craig looks over and he's like, that's fucking Ric Flair sitting like 5 people to our right. And I was like, oh my God, it is. And it was Ric Flair drinking a glass of wine. So Craig pulls the bartender over and says, hey, can you go ask Mr. Flair what he's drinking and ask him if I can buy him a drink? So the bartender goes, yeah, no problem. So he goes over there, and we couldn't hear everything because they were just far enough away to where you couldn't hear. And I see Flair look over, and he points to the girl I'm with, and he's like, her? And then the bartender's like, no, him. And then pointed to Craig, who was next to her. And then Flair like had a smirk on his face, said something to the bartender. Bartender walks back over to Craig, services a couple people on his way back over, and finally gets to Craig. And Craig's like, so what can I buy him? What's he drinking? And he goes, oh, Mr. Flair said you can't afford what he's drinking. And I thought that was the greatest Ric Flair answer, and I wasn't even mad because I thought it was genius, and I thought that is totally Ric Flair. And Craig laughed, and he's like, "Fair enough, no problem." And Flair never looked over once at us, by the way. But it was just such a perfect Flair answer. It was awesome.
That's so great.
That was a great story. And my last story of Vegas was that same year. So I go upstairs and I go to sleep. And Craig stays down with I think the same buddy Chris that we were with when we met Hogan. And so of course, like, you know, late in the bar, here comes Jeff Jarrett. And Jeff Jarrett comes up and with Jeremy Borash. A lot of people know him from TNA, but he worked for WCW before WCW went out of business.
Yeah.
So they sit down at the booth, and Craig is there with Chris, and I think it was kind of like the similar booth, so they could scoot over. So Craig scoots over into the booth with Jeff Jarrett. He's like, Jeff Jarrett, I'm a big fan of yours, and you know, blah blah blah. And you know, there was really no one at the bar, so Jarrett wasn't worried about being bothered or anything. So they talked for like 45 minutes, and he somehow convinced Craig that he was going to allow Craig, because Jeff Jarrett revealed that Craig was like, hey, where's Nitro tomorrow? And Jarrett's like, oh, it's in at Irvine, on the college campus in Irvine. It's in their little civic center. And Craig's like, oh my God, like, let me drive you there. And Jeff Jarrett's like, what? And he's like, let me drive you there. We live in Southern California. We live by Irvine. He's like, so we will take you there. You just get us free tickets and I'll drive you there. You don't have to worry about spending money on a rental car. You don't have to worry about anything. I'll drive you there. And Jarrett's like, I don't even know you. And I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to ride in your car. What kind of car do you have? And it was a small 4-door car that Craig had. It wasn't even anything big. So Jarrett's like, okay, well, I got a lot of luggage. And Craig's like, that whatever. And he's like, we'll put it in the back seat. Jeremy can sit in the back seat. And Jeremy's like, thanks. And Craig's like, well, I'm just being honest. Craig's like, no. You can sit in the front seat. Jeff, you could drive if you want. That way, you know, I'll let you drive my car. That way, you know you're going to get to where you're going to go. And I'll sit in the back seat. And then Jarrett was like, well, what are you going to be doing in the back seat the whole time? Craig's like, I don't know, probably just staring at you. He's like, well, now that's creepy as shit. I don't want to go with you. So Jarrett was laughing. It was all good-hearted and all fun. And Craig tells me this story in the morning, by the way.
Yeah.
So finally, after it's all said and done, Jarrett has Craig convinced that Jarrett's going to allow him meet me down here at whatever time in the morning in the elevator, and you could take me to Irvine, and I'll get you into Nitro. Which joke's on Jarrett, because that Civic Center held like 9,000 people, and Nitro, I think, legitly only drew like 1,000 people like the next day. That's how bad WCW was at the time. So he should have given us some tickets. So we would have been a little bit more asses than some seats there for them. So Jeff Jarrett and Jeremy, they get up and they excuse themselves. Well, it was nice talking to you, gentlemen. And, you know, we're going to go upstairs and we got to go to sleep. We got to get up tomorrow. And so Craig's like, yeah, no problem. I'll see you downstairs, blah, 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 blah. And then so Jeff Jarrett leaves the platform. And as I told you, it was up on like a three-foot platform, this bar. So as Jarrett goes down, he had to kind of walk by Craig's table again, but he's down off the platform by this time. So he gets down and he goes, oh, hey, Craig. And Craig leans down through the railing. He's like, yeah, Jeff? And he goes, yeah, sober up, bitch. Like that. And Jarrett smiles and walks to the elevator. And Craig looked at me and he's like, so I don't think Jeff Jarrett's going to let me drive him to Irvine. And it was so great. And Craig said that he was really funny, Jarrett was, and he was really cool to sit there and talk to him. But it's just funny that Jarrett like trolled him the whole time that he was down there. It was pretty fantastic.
I think out of all the people I haven't met, that would have been one of the best people to meet is Jeff Jarrett. If you could have a conversation like that, that's just
if you could catch
phenomenal.
them in their late years, like in '99 and 2000, where WCW was just falling down the toilet. You could probably have some cool conversations with a lot of wrestlers. But yeah, I was an old man and I went upstairs probably at midnight, and I think this was like 1 or 2 in the morning where Craig ran into Jarrett.
Wow.
But those are my Vegas stories.
Yeah, and some of those are absolutely incredible. I think it's such a unique environment where they're in Vegas, they're all at the same hotel, everybody knows where they are, and somebody that was virtually untouchable is now right there where you can even, to Craig's point, sit at the same booth. Quite impressive in itself in its own right, just being able to talk to some of these guys, and you know, even the Mean Genes of the world, watching Hogan control a crowd so we don't block fire exits, watching Jarrett telling our friends to sober up. You're not driving me to fucking Irvine. Like just to be able to have that conversation. Nobody can say like how many people could really say that that's happened to them. You know, you'll never see situations like that again. We can talk about, well, shit. Do you guys really want to talk about this? I mean, we got to talk about times that weren't so great.
This is probably, I don't care about anybody's story. This is probably like the greatest wrestling story ever.
The best.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the backdrop for this a little bit for you guys. And I think I'm going to have Jess take this over because I'm not sure if anybody could tell the story better than Jess at this moment. So this is really the year of late 95. We are just graduating high school in our class. I think Cuz
it was summer, and we know
we had graduated.
The hottest fucker in the world.
Yeah, and by the way,
Lake Elsinore hot.
Yeah, we're talking about summer in the Inland Empire of Southern California. This is the desert for those of you
triple
that don't
fucking
understand.
digits.
Yeah, triple digits in the summer, and the Storm Stadium. For those of you who don't know what that is, this is a minor league baseball stadium, right? And I know for a fact that Jess and Craig even talked to certain wrestlers that wrestled in that at Halloween Havoc events later, and like, oh my god, that was so fucking hot. They even remember it, and like they don't want to go back. And by the way, WWF and WCW, WWE, whatever you want to call it at the moment, no one has ever been back to that venue. They will never book it again. It won't happen. So because it was so fucking bad.
I went to a show after that though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there was a couple indie shows.
Yeah, there was an indie show with Tatanka.
I think when I went with Tito Santana and Snuka was the main event. And Valentine was on it, and I don't even remember.
But since
that was the War at the Shore. That's what they called that one.
But
Valentine was drunk.
But let's be honest, since '95, WWF or E has never been back.
No. Well, it also shows you how bad business was in '95.
Of course,
And for both companies, '95 wasn't great, but for WWF, '95 was trash.
So literally, these fuckers are wrestling outside in triple digit heat
in a
minor league baseball.
The Storm Stadium holds what, like 6,000 people?
Something like that. Not even sold out though. Huh?
Well, they put because it's a baseball field, so they put the ring on, not even on the diamond. It was away from the diamond.
It was almost in the outfield,
but the whole floor was full.
Sure.
And then I would say most of the stands were full. It was a decent showing. Well, I would say 3,500 people.
Well, let's be honest about it. I mean, how often would you get a venue right there in your town? So people were amped to go. And at this time, there couldn't be more than 30.
And wrestling was not mainstream at this point. It was down. But I would say there was like 3,500 to 4,000 people there. It was a decent turnout.
Way down. So in the realm of that, right, what we have is a series of shitty matches. Let's be honest about it. We got Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart topping the card. You got The Undertaker kind of getting his, I actually, you'd call him the B status against Kama.
The main event, just so you know, was the dudes with the attitudes, I think they call it, Diesel and Shawn, against, it was supposed to be Sid and Tatanka from the $1 Million Corporation, but Sid no-showed as usual, or couldn't show up. And then so IR fucking S replaced it. So it was IRS and Tatanka.
Which, by the way, IRS is
good wrestler.
I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying
just underappreciated. I'll stop there.
Got my mouth all fixing for some Sid and doesn't even show up.
No, fuck, you didn't care about Sid. Let's be honest. But anyway, is that another Sullivan on the right? God damn. All right. But anyway, so as we get into it, by the way, we have front row seats to this show. And we're 17, 18 years, because you're what, 15?
We got another key thing is we got front row seats
or so.
That much younger than us? Jesus Christ.
Cuz is 12 right now.
I'm 30, yeah.
We got front row seats for this. Front row, I've never gotten front row since then.
And Cuz
gotten close.
Cuz is maybe like two to three seats behind us.
Couple rows
back. Anyway, if you want all kayfabe to just disappear, get yourself a front row seat at any house or show anywhere, right? Because what you start to hear counts. Okay, we're going to do this on 3. They're talking to each other. I'm like, oh, fuck. All kayfabe is destroyed when you're in a front row seat. And again, to Jess's point, you have to make that decision. Are you going to deal with the fact that it is kayfabe and it is planned, it is predetermined, and they know what they're going to do? And once you make that decision, if you go the way we do, you're a wrestling fan for life, right? That's just the way it is. Because it is a craft. It is an art. And they can still get hurt. And they're doing this for your entertainment. Fuck you, Bruno Sammartino.
Not can still get hurt. They do.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they can and they do. They can and they do. To your point.
These back surgeries and hip surgeries are real. They're
Yeah,
not,
it's no fucking joke, right? That shit's real. I totally agree.
Neck
with that.
surgeries.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
John Cena
Yeah.
has had 2 neck surgeries already.
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
As far as this comes into it, we get into the realm of the Undertaker match, and it just so happens that at this moment, the Undertaker happens to have a manager in the name of.
And Undertaker is a face. That's important. He's a good guy.
He's a face. He's a
So him
good
and
guy.
Paul Bearer are good guys, and they're taking on Kama, who would later on become the Godfather, who before that was Papa Shango.
Yeah, yeah. He had many re-innovations, and there's a great Muda. There you go.
Snake Roberts, the clock on my embalming room wall is ticking down. Only 3 weeks away to WrestleMania. Oh, yes, there'll be a funeral in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Snake Roberts, you came to us asking of the secrets of the dark side. And what you learned, you tried to use for your personal gain. Now the running's over. Now, 3 weeks.
So, as far as this goes, Undertaker's a face, but you still have Paul Bearer, who is kind of like he is his valet, if you will, his manager, but it is face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Jess, who's going to tell, in my opinion, one of the most profound stories of a wrestling entertainer wrestler encounter that we've ever had. And even Cuz heard it in his wee little kid ears from 2 rows back. Just take
It was a first of all, it was still probably one of my favorite live events. To be front row was incredible. I'd never been front row before, and it was as bad as the product was at the time. It was still amazing to be front row and see these guys. I mean, right up front, like. I mean, you could lean over the rail and touch the apron probably. Like, that's how close we were. Obviously, it was front row. So the Undertaker was facing Kama in a boring fucking match. And like they all were.
Yeah.
And honestly, most Undertaker matches were boring as shit back then. Before he started actually being able to wrestle in like 97, 98, 99, he was actually allowed to be an athlete. Anyway, so, and Papa Shango, Godfather Kama, was never a good wrestler anyway. He was pretty awful, actually. Just had really good gimmicks. So we're watching this. It's a house show quality match. It's terrible. And so Paul Bearer is, the manager of Undertaker, and he's on the outside of the ring. And our friend Joe leans over, and we were never fans of the Undertaker, heel or face, just the way it was. Deal with it, people. So our friend Joe leans over the rail and says to Paul Bearer, and I quote, "Paul Bearer, you fat slob." So Paul Bearer looks at us, and again, he's a face. He's a good guy. He could have easily taken the high road and just been like, "Oh, I might be heavy, but I'm the Undertaker's manager. You better be careful or he'll bury you." He could say anything like that. He could have done anything like that and stayed in character, and we would have been like, "Yeah, whatever, Paul Bearer." But instead, Paul Bearer chose to hear that comment that Joe, and I'll repeat the comment that Joe said, "Paul Bearer, you fat slob." Paul Bearer leans over to him and says, "Yeah, well, you can suck my fat cock." And that is exactly what Paul Bearer said. And he dropped character. He went from the, "Oh, yes," to his southern, like, "You can suck my fat cock." And, like, we all looked at each other like, did Paul Bearer just tell us in a southern accent to suck his fat cock? So we were, like, pretty shocked. And we're like, I can't believe that he actually said this to us. So he circles around the ring, back in character. "Oh, come on, Undertaker, come on," and going around the ring. He loops back around to us, and we're shocked. So we don't say anything to him, but he comes back over to us and he goes, "And it's rich too." So not only did he tell us to suck his fat cock, he wanted us to know that he was a very wealthy man. Therefore, his penis was equally as wealthy. So we were like, oh my God. So instantly he goes to his Percy Pringle mode, which is probably what he was when he was in other promotions before the WWF. And he comes around again, and to our right by about like 2 families in the front row was this family we didn't know. And they were an African-American family. And they all heard what he said. And so did a lot of the people around the front row heard what he said to us. So people were starting to boo him. I would say about 20 people around the front row area would heard him. They're starting to boo him every time he came around. So this, African-American family was booing him as well. And one of the kids that we were kind of talking to, during intermission and stuff like that, we kind of just were chit-chatting because we're all front row. We were part of the front row club. So we were talking to him, and Paul Bear comes around when he's booing him, and he goes, "Oh, shut up, Leroy. Why don't you go steal some hubcaps from the parking lot like we know you're going to?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." So again, let's recap. Paul Bear, in his real accent, told us to suck his fat cock. He told us that his cock was rich too. So him and his cock shared a bank account. And then this African-American gentleman that was sitting next to us, he told to go to the parking lot and steal hubcaps like black people usually do. So I didn't know that about black people, first of all. I've heard a lot of stereotypes about black people, but I had no idea that one of their favorite pastimes was to go out to parking lots and steal hubcaps. I had no clue. But apparently Paul Bear knows more than we knew at the time, and that black people love them some hubcaps and love to go in parking lots and sporting events and steal hubcaps off cars. So either Paul Bear was ahead of his time, or that was something that would get Paul Bear in trouble for in 2018 because people would have recorded that shit. So that is our Paul Bear experience at the Storm Stadium in, I believe it was June or July of 1995. And I will never forget it because it was I don't think very highly of Paul Bear after that, but I get it. To be fair, it was triple digits. Paul Bear, if anyone's seen him, was probably 3 feet tall and about probably 350 pounds legit. And so he was never comfortable. And he was in this what was his profession? Oh God. Paul Bear was the mortician. Yeah. So he was in like a tuxedo like all the time.
All
like
black,
that. So yeah, he's in Lake Elsinore in an outdoor stadium in probably 109, 110 degree weather, and I'm not even exaggerating. He's in a tuxedo, yeah. And then someone leans over the rail and calls him a fat slob, which he obviously knew he was a heavy gentleman. I don't know if he had clean habits, but Joe apparently felt that he was a slob, so he called him that. So again, he just snapped and probably just, sucked my fat cock. But we were young looking kids. He told a bunch of kids that were basically teenagers to suck his fat cock. I mean, look. I knew he was in a house show. It was non-televised. It was triple digits, and he was like 350 pounds and seriously like probably 5'8". But at the same time, like I never respected him for breaking character because I'm like, you know what, man, like you could have done a lot of different things. Like I said earlier, like just stating character and you better stop or the Undertaker's going to bury you, like whatever. And we would have been like, oh, okay, whatever, Paul. But yeah, he decided to let us know that he did not appreciate that comment, which it wasn't a very nice comment on Joe's part. However, I was pretty shocked that we got Paul Bear out of character that day.
I also personally feel that Joe, our good friend from even
Joe can push buttons.
He has a way of finding what your button is and push it in record-setting time. And
Paul Bear had a big, fat, sloppy button.
He must have been pushing Hogan's buttons when he called Nick.
Shit. How about when you're
fucking away with it?
How about when you're in New Orleans fucking pushing police officers' buttons? That's not very smart either, but hey, that's Joe. That's Joe. What are you gonna do? We love him.
Hulk Hogan.
We enjoy the visits.
Yeah, that's my horrific Paul Bear story. It will stay with me forever because it was just such an unreal thing.
It is truly one of the greatest encounters we've ever had with any kind of wrestling persona. Not to say that that's good or great because we've had great experiences that were positive, but it is the most incredible experience we've ever had. Because in our mind, this is what you have to think about, Jess. We were just out of high school. We were in the summer of the light of our lives. And so much of what we had to make a decision on if we're going to continue to be wrestling fans. And this is hindsight, by the way. If we're going to be wrestling fans, is this going to be, what we're going to deal with? Because we started to realize that kayfabe is not very real, in a situation of this is all pre-scripted. You start to really learn about how this works. And you start to really see the breakdown of what's going to happen in the realm of wrestling, how it works, and everything you thought was real is not. And then on top of that, at this moment, you got Percy Pringle just shitting on everything you possibly could believe in or even possibly imagine what would be of a reaction, even if it was kayfabe. He
The mood
just
was
said,
so awesome here.
He just said, "Fuck off. This is what I'm doing." Right. So it's just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's one of the. When you think about where we were as kids, teenagers coming to adults, it is the greatest story that we've ever been a part of a wrestling encounter. So that's our stories. You guys got anything to add? Anything you want to?
No, I'm glad that we got to do this episode because it's since it's our first, I wanted to kind of us to introduce to people, how long we've been wrestling fans, and like we said in the beginning, we are just fans. We don't have any ties in the industry. We don't work for any companies. We just decided to do this, and I really wanted us to do this first episode to introduce ourselves and just tell cool stories that we had. A lot of people have gone to see live shows, but that's it. They just see the show that's on in the ring in the squared circle, and then that's it. They go home and they tell, it was a great show or it wasn't a great show or whatever. But we got a chance to actually meet wrestlers. A lot of people have not had a chance to really meet wrestlers. They've watched them maybe walk from the arena to their rental car or, wave to them and they get waved back. But I had some, three of us have had some legit contact with wrestlers and talked to them and got to kind of know some of their personalities a little bit. And, even in Craig's case, got to talk to Jeff Jarrett for 45 minutes or,
Sure.
Paul Bear invited us to suck his cock. I wish I would have done it because I thought it would be a better story. But
pass.
But yeah, it was just really. I just wanted people to know that going forward, we're really going to have good topics. We're not really going to talk about today's product. We might have new segments. We might here and there kind of drop you little tidbits. But I feel like if we talk about today's product, it's not in a great state as far as WWE is concerned. And as far as creative and all that stuff, and I think every show will sound the same. I want to bring back memories for other people. I want to talk about modern history, ancient history, everything. I want to talk about topics and really give people something cool to listen to. And if you disagree with us, I think that's even better. You can leave comments, you can email us, you can do all the stuff, and we encourage the comments. If you hate us, you guys sound like shit. You guys should fucking die. Cool. Send it to us. Email. I don't care.
Well, just keep me going.
Paul Bear told me to suck his dick. Do you really think that you telling me to die is going to make you feel any worse than Paul Bear telling me to suck his dick? I don't think so.
Or if you don't like it, it doesn't matter because we love pro wrestling. So this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
I agree completely.
I love sucking Paul Bear's dick. So, I mean.
Oh, yeah. My fat dick.
Well, this is the O.W.P signing off. A couple of episodes we're thinking about coming in the near future. We do have some things in the can or are close to in the can with the history of the Intercontinental title. We also have some ideas of how to, when we're talking about the art of selling, whether you oversell or not. And we even have, I think we have some ideas of what wrestler scared the shit out of you when you were a kid or maybe even an adult,
Yeah.
I'm sure Cuz really was scared of nails as an example.
Actually, that's funny because not that I was scared, but I actually legitimately thought like, man, that guy's a scary dude. You don't want to piss him off.
Yeah.
Right, so scary.
In hindsight, you laugh about it because you look at all these guys, you're like, oh, why was I scared of that? But as a kid, you might have been scared. Who knows? So those are the kind of things we're going to talk about coming up. If you guys have any ideas of or any insight of what you'd want to hear about, please send us some responses through our channel. It sounds like we might have OWC, our wrestling channel on YouTube coming up. So that's the OWP signing off, guys.
Suck my fat cock.
Peace out.
Suck my fat cock.